And we are live. No, perhaps in the future though. Welcome to my first, the one in discussion with, being held at the Anglo-Invokers Manor here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, our nation's capital, where you will find me helping people create wonderful experiences with their family and friends to create a lifetime of memories and a life-changing future through a lifestyle that I lead in the real estate industry. It is my hope that these discussions, my column being published this coming year in 55 Plus magazine, will be engaging, passionate, informative, and from time to time, lighthearted. I am honored that individuals here locally and around the world are willing to share their life experiences with us all. Why don't you say we get started? Today we are honored to have with us distinguished and accomplished Jackie Holzman, former Mayor of Ottawa and Honorary Director of Compassionate Ottawa. Hello Jackie, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you very much, and you too.
Jackie, let's get right into it.
Of course.
Your funniest political story.
There are a lot of political stories, but the one that I guess I'm most knowledgeable about has to do with the City of Ottawa chain of office that the mayors have worn since the 1800s. It's a marvelous chain. It's all linked gold little loops, and on the back of every link there's the name and the date of the mayor that was wearing it at the time, and then there's a great big fob there. It was a very beautiful chain of office, and I used to wear it for all the council meetings because it showed that there was a respect for the office, not necessarily who was wearing it, but respect for the office. All the mayors wore them for council meetings. There was a convention coming to town. The Navy were having a convention, and they were bringing naval people from all across Canada and from the UK and from the United States. And the organizers said, you must wear the chain of office. It's a formal dinner. Everybody's going to wear their medals. And it was going to be at Lansdowne Park in the Cattle Castle. I said, okay, I would do that. Well, it was night, and my husband was going to be coming as well, and he was wearing his tuxedo, and we were all dressed up. So I didn't have the driver. I had my husband. Anyhow, I took my chain of office, and I wore it to this bench, and I was sitting at the head table, and I told the story about the chain of office and other chains of office. And I told the story about Charlotte Whitten when she was entertaining the Lord Mayor of London, and she was wearing a black dress with décolleté, and she had a flower in her décolleté, and the Lord Mayor of London was all dressed up with his chain of offices, and he was supposed to have said to her, Mayor Whitten, if I smell your rose, will you blush? And she apparently said, if I pull your chain, will you flush? And everybody laughed, and I told them about my chain of office. Anyhow, we left early, and at the end of the evening, we came home, and I said to John, oh, where's the chain of office? And he said, it must be on top of the car where I left it. And we ran out to the garage. We had a station wagon with little ridges, and the chain of office wasn't there. So we retraced our steps back to Lansdowne Park, and when at Lansdowne Park, our parking space was still there, and we looked on the ground, and we looked on the two cars beside us, and it wasn't there. And I went, and the event was still going on, so I went into the Cattle Castle, and I said, has anybody turned in a chain of office? Nobody did, of course. We went out with the flashlight, and it wasn't there. So we decided to retrace our steps going out to the West End. We left the Cattle Castle, and we drove down the driveway, and we got on the Queensway, and as you accelerate at the Queensway going west, just about where the police station is, there lying on the ground
was the chain.
The links of the chain.
Oh,
the links were all hooked together with little links. So the links were there with little links, and there all these shiny pieces are on the ground, and there's the brown leather box that it was in, upside down, and there's the tissue paper that was up. So John backs up, pulls up the car, pulls over to the side, takes off his jacket. I said, why are you taking off your jacket? He said, well, I don't want people to see me. I'm going to be on the Queensway picking up the pieces. You better call the police. So I phoned the police. It's around 11:30 at night, and I said, it's Mayor Holzman. It's not a problem, but we had a little something on the Queensway. Could you send a car? Anyhow, by the time the police car came, everything was picked up and we're ready to go, and we said everything is fine. By the time we got home around midnight, the phone rang, and it was the newspaper, and they said, Mayor Holzman, we're monitoring the police phone line. Did you have a problem on the Queensway? I said, no, everything is okay. And then the other newspaper called, no, everything's okay. Well, by the time we caught our breath, I said, well, I've got to control this. So I phoned the Citizen, I phoned the Sun, and I said, yeah, we had a little problem, the chain, etc. Well, the next day, it was in the newspapers. It was a caricature that the Sun did, and people called me and sent me emails saying, I left a television camera on top of my car, I left a cake on top of my car, I left groceries, I left a baby. Anyhow, we related to everybody. But it was the kind of thing that shouldn't happen. And it shouldn't happen. Keep that chain of office in City Hall where it belongs. But I learned a lesson at that.
I've left my phone on top of my car many times. I think everybody's experienced that.
Yeah, well, I did too. And that was kind of an embarrassing moment, but something that people could relate to. It showed, first of all, that I should always use my driver and don't rely on my husband. He always said it was me. But anyhow, it was something we learned.
So, Ottawa's in our heart. We've been here forever. You've been the mayor. Number one life experience in Ottawa for you, let's say in the last 20 years, let's narrow it down. Or maybe after your time as mayor.
Well, before my time as mayor, I was a very involved volunteer in the community. And even continuing when I was the mayor, when I was on City Council. But when I was no longer mayor, 1997, I was still very involved in the community. I became the chair of the Congress Center at the time that it had to expand, and we were able to get the additional money, and it became the Shaw Center. I was also on the board of the National Capital Commission at the time when they were deciding where was the LRT going to go in the West End. There were a lot of things that I was involved in. One of the most important and significant ones was Compassionate Ottawa. People may have heard about Compassionate Ottawa, but I like to describe it by saying, think about a Peanuts cartoon. Charlie Brown and Snoopy are sitting at the end of the lake and they're looking out at the lake. And Charlie Brown says to Snoopy, Snoopy, one day we're all going to die. And Snoopy says, yes, but on every other day we're going to live. Now research, if you're into research says Charlie Brown is 100% right. Yes, we're all going to die. But research says that Snoopy is also is right, because on every other day we're going to live. And Compassionate Ottawa says to people, you're all going to die. Now, how do you want to live? Have you thought about it? What's important to you? What are your values? What are your wishes? How do you want to live? Where do you want to live? Because you have some control if you think about it in advance. You have to do some advanced care planning, some financial advanced care planning, some healthcare advanced care planning. So from Compassionate Ottawa, we have these sessions where we go out and talk to people. Actually, we encourage people to talk amongst themselves. We go to the libraries, we've gone to political meetings, we've gone to condominium associations, book clubs, churches, faith groups, and have people sit around and talk about what's important to you. What are your values? And there's a lot of ways of getting people to talk about it. So Compassionate Ottawa is extremely important, and it's something that is just permeated through the whole of the community. And right now, after 2.5 years, where many people have been isolated, many people haven't seen their family, they haven't been able to celebrate or to grieve, we're having an opportunity for people to come together Ottawa Ensemble. And how do you come together to celebrate, to grieve, to remember? And so that's what we're all about. And Compassionate Ottawa is a movement. It's a social movement. We don't have social workers that go out, and we're not counting widgets, but what we're doing is helping the community to talk about these things, to share their experiences, and to come together, which is really what it's all about.
So it's mostly focused on the more senior amongst us, the 55 plus, but you do bring in all generations, correct?
People who are 55 plus, if you've got children, have you talked to your children? Do they know where you want to live? Do they know who you want to live with? Do they know what options are there in the community? And that's another thing that I've been involved in. We could talk about Unitarian House, where we happen to be living now. But Compassionate Ottawa is to say, what are your values? What's important to you? Share them, talk to people, write them down. Because if, God forbid, something happens and you can't you can't tell people what you think about and what's important to you. Who knows about your values? Who knows what's important? Share them, talk to them, write it down.
Make a plan.
Make a plan, advanced care planning. And when the time comes, if you're in a big house, or if you're even a smaller house, or in a condominium, and the time comes for you to move into something else, who wants your treasures? You've been collecting fancy cups and saucers for 50 years. Young people don't want them. What are you going to do with them? Or you've got dishes that you think are important, you've got some gold on them. What your kids don't want them. They don't go in the dishwasher. What are you going to do with all that stuff? What are you going to do with the silver? What are you going to do with your big Chesterfield and your big dining set? You've got to think about these things. There are groups and people who want them. But don't wait for your children to have to make the decision. Make the decision. Every month, get rid of some stuff because they don't want your treasures, you can be sure.
What are the words you live by? What's your statement? What's
Yeah.
your why?
Well,
What's your why?
I've always wanted to make a difference. You know, get up every day. How can I remove barriers? How can I make life easier? Life is tough. Life is tough. It's tough to make decisions. But how can we remove the barriers? And you know, when I was a member of City Council, when I became the mayor, people used to say to me, you know, we just want to apply for a little building permit to put up a shed or something like that, or a little expansion. Why is everybody saying no? Why is it so difficult? Why is life so difficult? And I used to say, remove the red tape, lay out the red carpet. And that's one of the things that I believe in. Let's remove barriers. Let's make it easier for people to do what needs to be done. So make a difference, remove the barriers. I remember in the early days, in the early 80s, and we didn't have paratransport at the time. In the early 80s, we were talking about the 70s, we didn't have paratransport. And I was at the Social Planning Council at the time, and my background in the early 50s, I got involved with the Rehabilitation Center before it was even built. And I learned about the problems that were facing people who had disabilities of one kind or another. So many things. If you had a wheelchair and you wanted to go for a walk, there were curbs everywhere, or there were steps everywhere. And I used to go to City Council and say, never mind the people in the wheelchair, but what if you had a baby in a carriage? Or what if you had a stroller and every corner there was a bump? If you remove the bumps, if you remove the curbs, it's certainly better for the people on bicycles, it's better for the people who are pushing wheelchairs, pushing baby carriages, but it's better for the people in wheelchairs. So when you remove barriers, you remove them for everybody. And we used to talk about in those days, how do people in wheelchairs move from place to place? Where are they going to live that's accessible? People used to say to me, you know, I live in a nursing home, but I have a job. How am I going to get to my job? Right now I'm going in an ambulance. That's no way for an adult to go to work. We used to talk to people at City Council about transportation. There was a group in Ottawa in the 70s, late 70s. They got a summer grant to provide services for seniors. It was called TOAD, Tasks, Odd, and Diverse. It's just a group of young men. Yeah. And they found that what do seniors want? They want to be able to transport from here to there. And they found that transportation was the biggest need that they had. So we went to the region and we said, we need a transportation system for people in wheelchairs who, without the wheelchairs, they could get onto the regular buses, but they couldn't because of wheelchairs. And they would send us from the Transportation Committee to the Social Services Committee. I said, it's not a social service. Somebody wants to go to their job. They need transportation. And finally, we got them to understand that this was a transportation system. It wasn't social services, it was transportation. If you wanted to go to shop, if you wanted to go to the doctors.
And hence paratranspo.
There was no paratranspo at the time.
So you brought, okay.
So they said, how many people need this? I said, I don't know, but if you give us one paratranspo bus, we'll fill it. 2, and that's how paratranspo started. And it was started to take people who, because of a physical disability, couldn't use the regular bus. And now, of course, it's available for many people and with all kinds of disabilities. But that's how we started. We didn't want you to think about only people in wheelchairs. Get rid of the curbs. You can help people on bicycles. You can help people with baby carriages. You help people on wheelchairs. So those are the kinds of things that I got involved in before I was on city council, while I was on city council, and now, where do you live when you no longer feel that you can live on your own? I can tell you about the Unitarian house.
So, getting back to, the red tape and all that. So, you're the mayor today. I'm getting a little off script here, if that's okay. You see it in development, you see it in all kinds of city organizations and departments. It just seems like instead of getting less onerous to get anything done, it's gradually just getting more onerous. Is there anything that can, in your mind, that...
Yeah, it depends on what area we're talking about, what issue we're talking about. I'm not going to criticize the city council.
Yeah.
They have enough to do trying to get what they have to get done. Nobody wants to pay more taxes, but unfortunately, if you want services and if you want to compare yourself to cities in, let's say, the Netherlands or in cities in the Scandinavian countries, they pay heavy, heavy taxes for the services that they get from the government. But I like to look at from the community's point of view. What can people in the community do to make life difference? I always said to people who had a good idea, in my mind, no politician comes up with a good idea. They look around and they say, where's the parade? I'm going to be the leader. So if you have a good idea, and one of the groups that I spoke to many years ago was the people that were trying to get public washrooms, public toilets in the city. And I said, talk to people, make a parade. The same thing happened with housing. When we wanted to have housing for people with disabilities, you have to show that there's a parade of people who want that. You want to have better care in nursing homes? Start the parade, and then the public will listen. Right now, I'm very interested in where do seniors live when they no longer want to live or they no longer able to live on their own. And this started in the 70s. When I was at the Social Planning Council, my area was housing for people with special needs. There's a beautiful campus in town owned by the Unitarian congregation, out in the West End, off the Western Parkway, off of Richmond Road at Cleary. And at the time, they had a big campus, and in the middle 70s, they wanted to build housing for people with senior citizens, nursing homes, and a retirement home. In the end, they built the retirement home. But in 1982, before I was running for city council, they had a planning workshop, and I went to be the so-called expert because the person from the council agent wasn't there. And so I was interested in options for seniors. Not everybody is going to be able to live in the family home forever. Not everybody should be living there, because what we found is you could be living in the best house in the world, but if you're there on your own, the isolation, and particularly the last 2.5 years, isolation has been the killer, frankly. It's really been very difficult for people of all ages, people who are the readers of 55 plus, people who are younger, people who are working from home, people who are isolated. And they kept being told, stay home, don't go out. Well, they didn't have to stay home. They could function within their building or go outside, get fresh air. But the message was, stay home, don't go out. Well, that permeates in people's brains, and they say, well, I'll have to live by myself.
Just need social connections.
Social connections.
Need a little time, I love it with my clients who are all my age now, 55 plus. Even my mom, just a few minutes, my daughter calling or whatever. It's just connecting, and it's very important.
I have 4 adult children. They all live in Ottawa, and they won't mind me saying, but all 4 of my children are over 55. They are all 55 plus because I'm over 80. I'm almost close. I'm close
80?
to 90.
I was pegging you at 60.
90. Yeah, 87 at this point. But the point is, all of my 4 children are 55 plus. So they're all interested in how are they going to live? Where are they going to live? What values are important to them? And they all are involved in their community, whether it's the golfing community, whether it's their neighborhood, whether it's the tourism and the hospitality sector, whether it's the social services and the housing for people and this faith community. Get involved, stay involved. The good thing about Unitarian House is there's 130 odd people, I shouldn't say odd, there's about 133 folks or people living in Unitarian House. The first floor, 44 retirement suites. Third, fourth, and fifth floor are 66 independent living apartments. John and I live in an independent living apartment. And we first met in 1982, actually at the workshop, but in 1984, when they opened the building, I was the counselor, and I was there to cut the ribbon, October 84. And in December 84, he took me on a tour. Somebody said, had I been back? And I said, no, but they said, well, John Rutherford, he's the treasurer.
Right.
He'll take you on a tour. So he took me on a tour, and then we had lunch in the dining room with all the other residents, and that was our first date. So it was inevitable that we were going to be moving. We moved into Unitarian House, into 800 square feet, 2 weeks before the pandemic, the end of February, 2 weeks before the pandemic. And because we were living in this communal setting, we were always able to function within the community. We had our own community because we all decided we were all going to stay safe and we were going to keep our neighbors safe. And so we survived because we and there's so many things that we did.
But there's so many seniors actually that require housing, proper housing too.
Yeah.
There's a huge waiting list, isn't there, at the
Unitarian House,
Unitarian?
we don't even open up a waiting list.
Don't
anymore
even bother.
Because it takes, somebody said to me the other day, I'm on the waiting list for a 2-bedroom apartment. I'm 35th on the waiting list, and if I get in 20, 25 years, well, there needs to be more Unitarian houses, more functioning, more buildings that function like a communal living. And, there's all sorts of communal living opportunities.
Which one would you like, Jackie?
Well, I would like to tell you a few things. Can I tell
Go
you a few
ahead.
things that
You go
happened?
ahead. I got some
when I
other
was
things.
city council, when I was the mayor.
Okay.
Some of the things that happened when I was the mayor, because I've told you about the chain of office that
Yes.
happened. After,
Jim has a good story about that one too, pulling
we
it or
all
something.
have good stories.
Pulling
about
that one out.
Yeah. But one of the things that happened when I was the mayor in 1993 was when we had Bob Ray was the Premier of Ontario, and we had a huge deficit. They were really in debt in province, and they decided they were going to have Ray Days when anybody working for the government that earned more than $30,000 had to take 12 days without pay.
I remember.
I'm the mayor of the city of Ottawa, and I have to tell these people, you're not going to get paid, but you're going to work. The Ray Days, people will remember that. The other thing that I did, and this will be of interest to you as well, we were very concerned that Ottawa was becoming a kind of community like a donut, and the hole in the middle was the downtown, and nobody was living downtown. And at 5 o'clock, everybody emptied out. And it was because in 1964, the AZ 64 zoning bylaw kind of eliminated residential north of Gloucester. And we felt that if you don't have people living in your central area, you're going to have rot in the central area because it's not going to be a place where people want to live, work, or play. So I started, when I was the mayor, something called the Residential Downtown Intensification Team. Redo it.
So you were ahead of your time.
I was ahead of my time, yeah. And so what we did was we had a study. What are some of the things that we can do to incentivize people to build residential downtown? And one of the things we were able to convince both the city and the regional government, we were 2 levels in those days, was to eliminate development charges on any residential north of the Queensway within the certain boundaries. And it was not easy to do because development charges were used by the engineering department to build whatever it is they thought they needed. But we tried to make the case that this was going to cause more people to live downtown. And I can tell you, it was successful because all of the development north of the Queens, with the high rises, the Rideau Street, the market, all of that area, and Kent Street, all those streets came as a result of the incentive to eliminate development charges. Now, in my opinion, we should have reintroduced them at the year 2000, but I wasn't around at the time. So in my opinion, once they had people starting to move downtown, they didn't have to keep the elimination of development charges as long as they did, but nobody asked me. But that's why we have people that live downtown. And then Carlingwood Shopping Centre, when I was first elected in 1982, Carlingwood Shopping Centre, had the zoning and the opportunity to expand, to clean up some problems, and some of the people did not want it, but I knew it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, you're always faced with that, right? You're always faced with that. You're not going to please everybody in the end.
But those are some of the challenges. But Carlingwood is better than it was when I was elected in 1982.
If I'm not mistaken, we got a big, huge Canadian Tire there now.
There's a big, huge Canadian Tire.
It's the biggest I've ever seen.
It's not open yet as of today's date, but it will be hopefully by the time this goes to press.
Yeah, what do you think about the upcoming elections? What do you think the single most, we hear about the O train, and I think long term it'll be a positive thing for our community. But what do you think? What do you think's on the table? What in the next, we've had COVID, we've got inflation going through the roof. What's next? What do you think is going to be the most significant municipal issue coming forward, other than the O train?
Yeah, there will be all kinds of issues. There will be a lot of negativism, and when I was going to run for office in 1982, I met with an opponent, and he told me all the things that were wrong with the City of Ottawa, and he wanted to get elected so he could. I said, I think the City of Ottawa is pretty great. I want to be elected because I can help to make it better. Right. So I'm hoping that there will be a candidate for mayor that will look in a visionary point of view. How do we really want to see this city, a capital city of a wonderful country, welcoming to people from all over the world, coming to Ottawa, coming to Canada? How can Ottawa be a capital city that will welcome the world? How can we be proud of Ottawa? There are going to always be negative things. Every community, every city has problems. But we have such strength in this community. We have strong faith communities. We have strong neighborhoods. We have strong business areas. How can we just make it a little bit better?
Could put some spice.
How can we make it better? How can we look at the city from the long term? Never mind all the problems. Problems can be fixed. There can be solutions. But where's the vision? How can we come together? Ottawa, come together and make this the best capital city in the world.
Definitely need
not the biggest. We'll never be the biggest.
We'll never be the biggest.
We don't need to be the biggest. We won't be the biggest. But we got to be the best.
But we have a clean environment. You compare it to Southern Ontario.
We have
one of the best lifestyles you can ever have.
Why aren't we promoting our rivers? Why aren't we having people camping out, canoeing, paddling? I look out my window. Unitarian House is on the Ottawa River. I look out today. I saw somebody paddleboarding. Now, there's some the Deschênes Rapids and there's other rapids, but why can't we open it up so you could go all the way to the Atlantic, to the St. Lawrence on our river? And the canal. Let's promote the canal. Let's clean the canal. Let's have this a city where we're so proud of it.
And we have to create an energy. I feel like,
we do.
But Ottawa's Ottawa, and it is what it is. We are generally laid back in most senses.
I'll tell you what's wrong with Ottawa. One of the things wrong with Ottawa.
Okay, what's wrong with that?
We have we are the nation's capital, and the nation has to be proud of their capital. Politicians, there's 300 really odd MPs that come to Ottawa. Are they interested in making Ottawa a better capital city? Not likely. They aren't spending the money on this capital. Why wasn't Le Breton the place to put the Science Museum? Why wasn't Le Breton the place to put all the nation's pride and joy? Instead, we're going to have condominiums. That's too bad. I never supported that. Why is it?
I agree with you on that one.
Why do they?
I'm with you on that one.
They want to take the goodies back to their hometown because they're elected in their hometown. But where's pride in capital? Why do we have 24 Sussex that should have been torn down years ago? There's nothing there that goes back to the past. Why is it so difficult to get this nation? Somebody said, and I think maybe when Jacques Ribert was doing his thing, why didn't he say we should be a federal district like Washington, a federal district on both sides of the river? Because we are a community on both sides of the river. Our economy is on both sides of the river. Instead, the river sometimes becomes like a wall. And it shouldn't be. We should be a nation's capital where there's pride in the nation's capital.
Well,
because I'm just above
the most rewarding thing, getting older. What's the most, maybe we'll...
Well, I say bring those birthdays on. I just say keep them coming. I don't want them to stop. Keep keep them coming, because every day, no matter who you are or where you are, get up, try to make a difference. Make a difference in your life, make a difference in your neighbor's life. Knock on the door of the apartment across the hall. Many people, even in our seniors' buildings, and I remember even in the 80s when I was running my first campaign, I ran 5 elections, I used to go into apartment buildings and the people were afraid to open their door when I was knocking on the door. Open the doors! Come out of your apartments. People 55 plus, get out of your apartments, meet your neighbors, knock on your neighbor's door, have a cup of tea. You can always make somebody's life better.
I agree. Jackie, being my first interview, I just want to sincerely thank you. It has been a tremendous pleasure to have you here. The first column in 55 Plus will be coming out in the next edition of 55 Plus. You'll be able to find a transcript, basically an edited version of our interview today in there. And I look forward, and once again, whether it was the Ottawa Senators that you stood there with me to fight a council that just wouldn't agree at the time, to this day, you've always been there for me. I thank you so much, and thank you for being the first interview, and I hope there's many more to come.
The first and not the last. And my 100th birthday will come out and celebrate it, plus 55 plus.
We'll go plus 110.
Plus 1. Yeah, plus.
Thank you so much.
My honor and my pleasure.